Hello and welcome back everybody. Today we're gonna talk about chapter 169 of My Hero Academia. Looks like we're getting a new arc right off the bat, and I have to admit this arc looks really interesting. And the reason why it looks really interesting is because in the past we had a sports festival, and now it looks like we're getting introduced to a new festival, except it's not gonna be a second sports festival. That would be kind of repetitive in my opinion. Instead we're gonna get something called a culture festival. Now this is apparently something that's very common in Japan, not really where I live, so I'm not really too familiar with the whole concept, but regardless, based on what's been explained in the chapter, I really think having a festival arc like this every once in a while, at least more than once, and this is obviously the second time it's happening, so I think that's really good for this series because we get some time to relax from the whole action, hero versus villain theme. And I did say before that I did want the next arc to be less focused on fighting, and that looks like it's gonna be happening. Instead, in this arc, it looks like we're getting introduced to some sort of dancing theme and a musical theme, especially from class 1A, but the whole school is basically participating, so we're gonna see all kinds of things from class 1B, the general department, the support department, yada yada yada. There's gonna be a lot of things happening that we probably aren't really familiar with in this series. It's not really gonna be learning about villains, it's not gonna be practical exams, these kind of things that we've been having a lot lately. Instead, we are going to see some screen time from characters that we probably wouldn't see much screen time from otherwise, like especially Mina Jirou and Jirou Kyoka. These characters seems to be getting a lot of screen time in this arc, based on what we know in this chapter. It really looks like they're gonna focus on these two characters from class 1A, probably some other characters from other classes as well. So in this chapter they were trying to decide, what are they gonna be doing, because their class has to pick some kind of event that is going to be part of this whole festival, and they couldn't really decide right off the bat what they wanted to do. We see all kinds of suggestions. We have Mineta being all pervy, wanting a titty bar, Kaminari wanting some kind of maid cafe, all kinds of suggestions are just being put forth, and obviously some are a bit unrealistic and inappropriate in general, and they had to kinda narrow it down to something simpler and more reasonable. And at the end of the day, what they decided to do, they didn't really want to not come up with something, because Aizawa did say that they would have to do something far worse, if they couldn't come up with a theme. So even now, we saw some quick teamwork going on that isn't really revolved around heroics or something along those lines. So the theme that they decided to go with is called a live performance with dance and party space. So it's gonna be like a concert slash musical, I guess. You could probably somehow link it to High School Musical, the Disney shit. Not really gonna go there myself because, just let's not, okay? Just let's not go there. But what I found fascinating in this chapter wasn't really the theme itself. It was actually the way that they wanted to present Jirou and Mina. Because Mina and Jirou, their hobbies, as we learn, early on in the chapter, it's music and dancing, and at the end of the chapter we find out that the theme is gonna be a musical that revolves around dancing. So we're gonna have Jirou obviously being in charge of the music, well, the instruments, I guess, because she knows how to play a lot of instruments. And then we have Mina, who's gonna have to probably teach a lot of people how to dance, because she seemed to be really good at dancing. Some people in the class probably aren't. Maybe some can pull off some nice moves, but at the end of the day I think a lot of them are gonna need some help. And who better than Mina, who showed that she actually knows what she's doing on the dance floor. Granted, her dancing with her acid could pose to be a problem, but I guess she doesn't really have to rely on her breakdancing all of the time. It could just be some basic dancing during the whole festival. Now, what I mostly want to talk about is Jirou, because in the past when we were seeing their dorms, we were told by Jirou that she knows how to play her instruments, just a little bit, she knows a thing or two about her instruments. That's what she said. I think she was actually being very modest, and in this chapter it kind of proves that she was, because we learned that she has probably didn't want to show off her skills. She was being very modest about herself. She didn't really want to show everyone what she can do. She's not really that outgoing as some of the other characters are, about her hobbies at least. I mean, there's not really anything wrong with that. I mean, not everyone wants to show everybody what they can do. You know, right now they're actually training at a hero school, so obviously she probably thought that, you know, as long as I do the hero stuff properly, there's not really gonna be any issues. But then they move into the dorms and we see her with all of these instruments, and people are being really interested in what she can play, and now we have this whole festival where she will end up being of great help. And out of all people, Kaminari actually supports her, helping out with the music stuff, because, you know, in the past, up until now, we've seen Jirou just making fun of Kaminari all of the time, and despite that, Kaminari actually comes up to Jirou and actually backs the idea that she should help out. He thinks it's really cool that she can play all of these instruments. So having someone like Kaminari, who she's actually been picking on the whole time, support her, that's really gonna build up her morale. And then obviously we have Koda, out of all people, the animal quirk guy. He also supports this idea that despite the fact that he barely ever talks. So she's having these two people that's been kind of relevant around her character during the story support her, because Koda was teamed up with Jirou during the practical exam before the field trip, and Kaminari, as I said, has been made fun of a lot by Jirou. So these two characters are really connected to Jirou in a sense. So I think to Jirou, having these two people in particular actually support the idea of Jirou, you know, helping out with the music for this live performance, it's gonna be something that really adds a lot to her character. It adds a lot to the story in general, and especially to this upcoming arc. Now Mina is not as impactful, I guess, because we didn't really know much about her character. I mean, the only thing we really know about Mina is that she has some backstory with Kirishima and she likes to dance. There isn't really much to go on with her character, but having, you know, Mina and Jirou, who haven't really up until this point been too relevant in the story, have a lot of screen time, you know, build up their characters in this arc. That is something that I think is gonna be of great value, because Horikoshi, he really wants to push characters that aren't as relevant. He wants to make sure that everyone gets an equal amount of screen time. And this time it's Mina's turn and it is Jirou's turn. Not only their turn, of course, but these two seems to be the new, I guess, side characters in the class, if you will, that are going to be focused on, and they're probably gonna become less side characters and more main characters, for this arc at least. Now, another thing that interests me, but it isn't really important, is we actually got some interesting references in this chapter. Like, we had these YouTube references of Ida looking on YouTube for ideas earlier on in the chapter, and then at the very end of the chapter we see this mysterious guy looking at YouTube again to see what they decided, I guess. Now, what interests me about the final panel as well is we see some kind of text suggesting that this guy is someone that's going to be introduced in this arc. We don't know who he is, what his intentions are. Could be a bad guy, could just be a good guy that hasn't been revealed yet. Could be someone we know, but you know, the silhouette that's being reflected from the screen doesn't really show us enough to tell us, okay, that's him or her. I think it's gonna be someone new though, because I didn't really recognize the characteristics from what we got to see, and he has some sort of scarf covering half of his face. Obviously, that could be simply because they don't want to reveal to us who it is actually is, but it could be that that is just his general design, and if that is his design, then it is probably someone we haven't encountered yet. So I'm really curious to see exactly who that character is going to end up being. If it's gonna be someone, you know, is it gonna be a teacher we haven't seen before? Is it gonna be a pro hero? Is it a student we haven't seen before? Doubt that's the case though. Maybe it's a villain. I really hope it's not a villain, because I really don't want this arc to be a villain arc, honestly. I want this arc to be really centered around Mina and Jirou building character without this whole thing turning it into some chaos villain attack like his USJ. But other than that, I really don't have anything else to add, so let me know what you think down below in the comments. Do you think this chapter was good? Do you have high hopes for this arc? And as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new to my channel. This has been your favorite host, Perm, and I will see you next time.